Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Really glad you could join us today.
Yeah, great to be here. We're just jumping into Genesis chapter 13 today.
Right, and this chapter, it really feels like a hinge point, you know? We're sort of shifting gears from that broad primeval history into the story of Israel's ancestors. It's quite the transition.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And our mission, really, for you listening, is to explore Abram's journey here, his faith, the challenges that can actually come with blessing, which is interesting.
Definitely.
And then there's this really critical choice Lot makes and how Abram responds with this renewed commitment to Yahweh.
We'll be looking for those insights, those takeaways that speak to our own lives as followers of Yeshua, right?
Yeah.
Things that can help us navigate our own walk.
Exactly. Practical stuff rooted right in the text.
Okay, so diving in, reading chapter 13 again, a few things really stuck out for me. First, just Abram coming back from Egypt. After that whole difficult episode down there, his return feels significant. Then his generosity with Lot, I mean, giving him first pick of the land, that's pretty remarkable.
It really is.
And like we've seen before, he builds another altar. It's like these altars are waypoints on his spiritual journey, marking his reconnection with Yahweh.
Yeah, those altars are key. And for me, what stood out was maybe the theological flow of the chapter. You see this pattern, return, then there's conflict, then a choice. Then Yahweh speaks divine revelation, and it all ends in worship.
It's a great way to put it. Return, conflict, choice, revelation, worship.
Right. And it really highlights how Yahweh's plan keeps moving forward, even when humans mess up. His promises depend on his faithfulness, not our perfection. That's, I think, huge for us walking with Yeshua.
That's a solid foundation.
Okay.
So let's track Abram's journey here. He comes back from Egypt, him, Sarai, Lot, and they are not poor.
No, definitely not. The text makes a point of saying they're incredibly wealthy livestock, silver, gold, a direct result of Yahweh's blessing, even despite the detour in Egypt.
But it's what Abram does next that says so much about where he is spiritually.
Indeed. He heads straight back to that altar between Bethel and Ai, the place where he first called on Yahweh's name when he arrived in Canaan.
That's so intentional.
It is. And this isn't just, nostalgia. It's an act of Zakar. Remember Zakar, that Hebrew word?
Yeah, it's more than just remembering, right? It's like an active thing.
Exactly. It's active covenantal remembrance. It's not just recalling facts. It's about bringing Yahweh's past faithfulness, his promises, into the present moment, especially after his, let's call it, compromised time in Egypt.
Where he was clearly operating out of fear, not faith.
Right. So going back to the altar, it's like a spiritual reset. He's intentionally recalling Yahweh's grace, realigning his life with Yahweh's purposes. It's a discipline.
So Zakar is about consciously grabbing hold of Yahweh's track record, his faithfulness, especially when we feel lost or maybe we've messed up ourselves, like hitting the reset button based on his promises.
You got it.
Yeah.
It reorients you.
But how do we keep that from just becoming, a routine, just going through the motions versus that active covenantal remembering? What's the practical difference day to day?
That's a really important question. I think the difference is whether it changes how you act now. Passive memory is just data. Zakar fuels present action. For us, with Yeshua, it's meditating on his death, his resurrection, his promises for the future, not just his history, but as living realities that empower how we live today.
Okay, like letting the reality of his sacrifice change how I respond to someone at work or how I face a difficult situation.
Precisely. Think about communion or the Passover Seder. Those are structured acts of Zakar, designed specifically to recenter us on Yahweh's redemptive work.
Recentering us, I like that. And that renewal is vital because right away in Genesis 13, there's a new challenge. And it's ironic, isn't it? The challenge comes from the blessing itself.
Yeah, the text uses the Hebrew word kabed, heavy, weighty, to describe their prosperity. It implies their blessing, all this wealth, became a burden.
Heavy, it weighed them down.
Exactly. It created friction. It wasn't just stuff. It was a weight on their relationship, on their ability to dwell together peacefully.
And that internal weight spills out into external conflict, the merivah between their herdsmen.
Right, merivah, strife, contention. And that word merivah, it echoes later in the Torah, doesn't it? Like the waters of Meribah in the wilderness.
Or Israel quarrels with Yahweh himself, yeah.
So linking this herdsman squabble to that word kind of elevates it. It suggests this isn't just about grazing rights. It's a deeper issue. Strife among Yahweh's people, it's serious. It fractures community.
Wow, that connection adds a lot of weight, that kabed, to this conflict. It makes you think about our own communities or congregations. Sometimes the very blessings we seek growth, resources can become points of friction if we're not careful.
Absolutely. If we forget who the blessing comes from and why it was given, maybe personal ambition starts to creep in.
So what's the key then? When prosperity or maybe internal disagreements pop up among Yeshua followers, what's the biggest pitfall?
Hmm. Maybe it's losing sight of the kingdom perspective, focusing on my share, my comfort, rather than the collective well-being and testimony. But Abram's response here gives us such a powerful counterexample.
He really does. His humility is just stunning. He, the patriarch, the one with the promise, tells Lot, his nephew, you choose first.
Think about that. He yields his right, his position.
It's this incredible act of faith, isn't it? Trusting Yahweh will take care of him no matter what Lot picks. But, doesn't that sometimes look like weakness? Especially if you're supposed to be a leader.
Well, in the world's eyes, maybe. But from Yahweh's perspective, and certainly thinking about Yeshua's teaching.
The first shall be last.
Exactly. The greatest is the servant. Abram showing true strength here, the strength to trust Yahweh's unseen promise over the visible advantage. His security isn't in the best land, it's in Yahweh.
Which is the complete opposite of Lot's approach.
Totally. The text says Lot lifted up his eyes. That phrase. He surveys the Jordan plain. It's well-watered, looks like the garden of the Lord, like Eden, or like the land of Egypt.
Both symbols of earthly abundance and maybe self-sufficiency. Egypt certainly wasn't a place of faith for Abram.
Right, and that phrase, lifted up his eyes, it often pops up in Scripture around temptation or choices based purely on human sight, doesn't it?
Yeah, like Eve seeing the fruit was pleasant to the eyes. Or the sons of God seeing the daughters of men back in Genesis 6. It's about judging by appearance, by carnal desire.
It's the choice driven by sight, not by seeking Yahweh's guidance. It's self-interest, what looks good now.
And the narrator drops that bombshell of a comment right in the middle of Lot's assessment.
The parenthetical?
Yeah.
Before Yahweh destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Chilling.
It's like a huge flashing warning sign from the narrator. This choice, based on what looks lush and prosperous, is leading Lot straight towards disaster.
It's a masterstroke of foreshadowing. It tells us, the readers, that choices based solely on worldly appeal, without considering the spiritual reality, can have catastrophic long-term consequences. We see the terrible payoff later in Genesis 19.
Doesn't that just scream contrast with Yeshua's teaching? Seek first the kingdom of Yahweh and his righteousness. Don't worry about what you'll eat or wear. Trust your father.
Absolutely. Lot prioritized the visible, the temporary. Yeshua calls us to prioritize the unseen, the eternal kingdom. It forces us to ask, what am I lifting my eyes to?
What shapes my decisions? Is it the lure of worldly comfort and appearance, or faith in Yahweh's promise and his kingdom? That's a searching question.
It really is. And notice the timing here. It's after Lot leaves, after that separation.
Then Yahweh speaks to Abram again.
Yes. It almost seems like Lot's presence, maybe his whole worldly mindset and the strife it caused, was somehow hindering Abram's deeper connection with Yahweh.
Interesting. So the separation was necessary for Abram to fully receive the promise?
It seems that way. And now, the promise Yahweh gives is exclusively for Abram and his descendants. No more ambiguity. It's focused.
And then Yahweh gives that command, arise, walk through the land, the length and breadth of it, for I will give it to you. What's going on there? Is he supposed to literally hike the whole thing?
Probably not literally traverse every square mile. It seems more symbolic.
Yeah.
Like an act of faith, claiming possession of the promised inheritance before he actually owns it physically, stepping out on the promise.
And mapping it out by faith. It reminds me of Moses on Mount Nebo, right? Looking out over the land he wouldn't enter, but seeing it as Yahweh's gift to Israel.
Exactly. It connects Abram's personal journey to the destiny of his descendants. Faith often means acting on the promise before you see the fulfillment.
And how does Abram respond to this renewed promise?
He moves again. He settles by the oaks of Mamre at Hebron, and what does he do?
Builds another altar. Consistent.
Always returning to worship. And Hebron, the name itself, is significant, isn't it? It means something like association or fellowship.
So moving from Bethel, the house of God, where he sort of recommitted after Egypt,
to Hebron, fellowship, signifying a deeper, restored communion with Yahweh. The strife with Lot is replaced by intimacy with God.
That's a beautiful picture of spiritual growth. From resetting the relationship to deepening the fellowship. It shows our walk isn't static. It deepens through these tests and choices.
It really does. And stepping back even further, think about the contrast between this whole story and Babel, just a couple of chapters before.
Right. Babel was all about, let's make a name for ourselves. Human pride, self-glorification, trying to reach heaven on their own terms, defying Yahweh.
And the result? Yahweh scattered them, confused their language, they wanted fame, they got anonymity. We don't even know their names.
But then Yahweh calls one man, Abram.
And promises to do for him exactly what Babel failed to achieve through pride. I will make your name great.
Wow, it's a direct reversal.
Completely.
Yeah.
Genesis 13 shows how Yahweh does it not through human striving, but through Abram's humility, his generosity, his faith. His selfless actions are the polar opposite of Babel's self-serving ambition.
So, true greatness, a lasting legacy, it's not something we build for ourselves through pride.
No, it's a gift from Yahweh, given to those who walk humbly with him, who trust him. The whole Abrahamic story starts as Yahweh's answer, his divine reversal of the pride and rebellion of Babel. That's a foundational piece for understanding God's plan.
That really reframes everything. Okay, thinking about applying all this, it brings up some big questions for us, doesn't it? Like, how do we tell the difference in our own lives between a lot choice based on what looks good and a choice guided by faith in Yahweh through Yeshua? It's not always clear-cut.
Not at all.
Okay.
And what about that merivah, that
Then we
strife?
can-
What does Abram's humility teach us about resolving conflicts in our families, our workplaces, our congregations? Prioritizing the relationship over being right or getting the best deal.
That's challenging. And back to Zakar, how do we practically, intentionally practice that act of remembrance? How do we bring Yahweh's past faithfulness, Yeshua's victory, into our present anxieties or regrets so it actually changes things?
And maybe we need to ask, are there any lots in our lives? Relationships, attachments, ambitions, maybe even good things that are subtly pulling us towards worldly values and hindering that deeper fellowship, that Hebron with Yahweh and Yeshua.
That requires some honest self-examination. And finally, that Babel-Abram contrast. What does it tell us about real legacy? What are we building? Are we trying to make a name for ourselves, or are we seeking to live faithfully within Yahweh's purposes, trusting him for the outcome like Abram did? How do we pursue that kind of legacy as Yeshua's disciples?
Lots to chew on there.
Definitely. Well, as we start to wrap up this journey through Genesis 13 with Abram, it's just packed with lessons on faith, on the consequences of our choices, and the beauty of restored fellowship with Yahweh. His humility is just striking.
It truly is. And maybe a final thought for you, listening. How does your personal vision, what you habitually lift your eyes to, what you prioritize day in and day out, how does that shape your spiritual path, your ultimate destination? And how can you, starting today, intentionally cultivate a vision that's truly aligned with Yeshua's kingdom and Yahweh's heart?
That's a powerful challenge. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into Genesis 13. We hope you'll join us next time as we continue our chapter-by-chapter study here on The Deep Dive.
As we wrap up today's study, let's pause and reflect on what we've learned and receive the blessings of Yahweh.